Alright guys, today we're going to be talking about the lewdest nun of them all, Kiara Sessyoin. She is the original third evil of humanity and the primary antagonist in Fate Extra CCC. If you haven't already, make sure that you peep game on my BB lore, since that provides a lot of extra context. So right from the start, Kiara introduces herself to the main character, Hakuno, as one of the focal members from the cast. Being a part of the student council, Hakuno asks Kiara could she help them out in a fight against another antagonist, BB. Kiara tells us that she won't join the council specifically, but she'll help us out here and there whenever she can. So, just as she promised, the more we progress through BB's labyrinth, she helped us out along the way. Several times throughout this maze, we ran into multiple shields that could only be bypassed by Kiara's unique power, the 5 meditations. This skill allowed us to see past these shields and enter the heart of different characters, giving us a chance to knock down the gate entirely. We continue to progress through the story, and our president, Leo Harway, finds Kiara to be moving kinda sus, and the fact that she denied joining the council didn't help. We call her out on these actions to see what she really knows. Turns out, she knew BB the entire time before all of us, and when the entire school was swarmed with BB's black noise, she almost became one of the victims. She further claims that she made a pact with BB that as long as she doesn't interfere directly, BB will allow her to survive. At the time, we were like, cool, the way you're moving is kinda odd, but we'll just look the other way. Eventually, things spiraled into even greater concern when we find out that Kiara is a wanted criminal by the Western European plutocracy. This plutocracy being some of the highest rulers of the extra world. That's kind of a big deal. So the crew decides to do even more investigation on Kiara's past. As a child, Kiara was the daughter of a monk of the Shingon Tachikawa Eitan school. Formerly, they were known to be a heretical sect of Buddhism. During this time, Kiara was diagnosed with an illness, realizing that she would live no longer than the age of 14. With nothing else left to give, she decides to spend the rest of her days bedridden, learning about spiritron hacking. It was through this process that she was able to find a cure and managed to fix the problem on her own. Another thing that she found was several people that shared one of her interests. The main thing that molded Kiara's mind as a child was the influence of the Tachikawa sect, who, in contrast to Orthodox Buddhism, believed that sex and black magic was a proper way of achieving enlightenment. Now that her illness was out the way, Kiara operated as the last officiating monk of her school and managed to recruit an abundance of new members. First by gaining the favor of the people that were nearby, and then eventually moving out to the people worldwide. Her methods, however, proved to be disastrous. What Kiara essentially promised to the people that followed her was that they would be saved as long as they relieved themselves of their sexual desires. Ultimately, the Tachikawa sect had become a Buddhist sex cult. Things were working out fine until they found out that her guidance was a lie. These people weren't saved. They never would be. And it is for that fact that they were driven into madness. They began to turn against each other, leading the far majority of her followers into taking their own lives. Even the people that came to Kiara for advice in a simple conversation, man or woman, took their own lives as well, in mass numbers on top of that. The ones that didn't end it all, fueled by their own hopelessness, tried to take Kiara down with them, but her influence was just too strong. The ones that remained at her side would take a bullet for her sake. Her lover, for example, died just to make sure that Kiara would be able to live on. With all these deaths going around and her being associated with these people, Kiara was labeled as a murderer and is now wanted as a digital criminal worldwide. Even the Holy Church co-signed the plutocracy's campaign since they couldn't stand the idea of somebody running around like they're this prophet that can save everybody. You're not the Messiah, you're a treesh. We gotta get this woman out of here. So we confront Kiara about this information and she flat out tells us, yeah, I did that. She doesn't even feel bad about it. Look, I'll put it like this. Those people wanted to be saved. I wanted to help save them. It just so happens that the situation ended with their demise. That ain't got nothing to do with me. You can't be serious. The closer we get to the moon cell's core, the weirder Kiara starts to act, to the point where her actions didn't really make any sense at all. We go to Kiara and tell her, hey, we really need to borrow your secret technique, the 10,000 colored stagnation. Otherwise, the entire Earth is going to be wiped out, and I'm more than certain that you don't want that. She looks at us with a straight face and says, nah, I don't think I will. Once again, I'm only here to relieve people of their earthly desires. All this other stuff that y'all got going on, I want no parts in it. And not only did she deny to help us, but she dips out with her servant shortly after. Even Gilgamesh looked to the side and said, alright bro, she kinda out of control at this point. We might have to chase her down. So we chase Kiara into the labyrinth and she says, fine, I'll help you. This was a power play on her behalf because, as I mentioned before, she can help us outside the labyrinth, but inside she is not allowed to interfere. Yet she went out of her way to agree from the inside. In the very moment that she did this, one of BB's alter egos, Meltralis, stabbed Kiara through the chest and killed her. After this, we continue to go to the moon cell's core, we defeat BB at the core, and then we meet up with Kiara's servant, Hans Anderson, who by this time should no longer exist, and he explains why. Throughout the story, Hans would make subtle references about Kiara's behavior, implying how toxic she was, that she's a parasite that feeds on others, and how she wouldn't help a soul unless it mutually benefited her. Unfortunately, this was not just hyperbole. Our survival leads us to discover that Kiara didn't die, and that she was in fact the one behind it all the entire time. That she's the one that hacked Sakura's program and caused BB to go on a rampage. That she purposely made a pact with BB only to absorb her after she was defeated, and that she also took in the alter egos Passion Lip and Meltralis, not to mention Sakura, taking complete control of the moon cell. To top this off, Hans would then go on to use his phantasm, allowing Kiara to be reborn as a demon goddess. This enabled him to function as her master, while she was the one that fought as the actual servant. Everything appeared to be going in her favor, but coincidentally, in order for us to reach the core, we had to bond with the characters that she absorbed, and those revelations came with a lot of respect for Hakano. The core reason that we were able to beat Kiara was that her body itself was working against her, since the people she absorbed were rooting for Hakano to survive. Once it's all over, Hans explains to us the importance of external love, that while self-love is important, too much of it will cause you to turn into Kiara, or himself, who is a pessimist that gave up on mankind. Hans confessed his love for Kiara revealing that although he constantly gave her a hard time, he sees a lot of himself within her and therefore understands her plight better than anyone else. Another thing that we come to find is that in Kiara's childhood, she took a strong liking to Han's story, The Little Mermaid, and this is why she summoned him as her servant. Even in her Grand Order Bond CE, she mentions that his story was the only sliver of hope that she had when she gave up on everything else. But perception is a dangerous thing. While Hans revealed that he only wrote the story for his own sadistic pleasures, Kiara took the story in a different way, and it brought distortion to the way that love works in her mind. As a result, she turned into a person that got off on the idea of people taking her advice. She didn't care what happened to those people after the fact, so long as it satiated her selfless desires. She obsessed with the idea of love until she became an incarnation and lost her own life because of it. In a very similar fashion, Kiara does a lot of the same things in Grand Order. Just like in Extra, Kiara made the same pact with BB, only this time the roles were reversed, and BB was the one that was told not to interfere. After the demon god Zephyr escaped the Temple of Time, he too wanted to find his own way to help out humanity. As he surveyed the outcome of different timelines, he found a version of Kiara that happened to survive her illness without all of the cult activities, and she actually turned out to be a therapist. Seeing this, Zephyr merged this timeline with the memories of how she turned out in CCC and tried to remain dormant in her body long enough to build a singularity of his own. But even for Zephyr, Kiara's seduction skills were just too good, leaving the only part of her body that he could effectively take control of being her pinky. My man is going out sad. At this point, Kiara said, why run a singularity when I could just become one myself? And crushed the demon god Zephyr along with the little influence that he thought he had. Prior to this, Zephyr used Kiara as a vessel to turn the oil rig Seraphix into a digital equivalent of CCC known as Seraph. And just like in Extra, Kiara was able to accomplish this by using her influence to convince the Seraphix crew to do her bidding. Now that Zephyr was out of the picture, she completely ignores his plan to build a singularity, evolving into the Beast class. She is the original Beast 3 and a counterpart to the Beast, As it turns out, certain entities in the Beast class actually come in pairs, and Kiara and Kama just so happens to be one of them. Her true goal was to allow Seraph to sink into the Earth's core so she could merge with the planet. That way, she could once again put the Tachikawa teachings into full effect and sacrifice billions of lives to reach the greatest climax that the world has ever seen. Can somebody please get the psych ward on the line? Now, since her extra version was used as a base, Meltrellis, Passionlip, and BB were brought into the chapter since they were absorbed by her in the original story. We managed to flip the odds by bringing those same characters on our side. We also find that in the past, Meltrellis experienced an outcome where the odds weren't so favorable, and the main character actually died because Kiara's restraints wouldn't allow them to help. Knowing of this outcome, Meltrellis used both her and Passionlip's phantasm and launched herself back in time with this new information. When they met with Kiara this time around, the restraints were lifted and Meltrellis was catapulted into Kiara to finish her off with her phantasm. Since Zephyr tried to take root in her body, we find out that Kiara can actually use her hair to function as demon pillars. She then constricted Melt with her hair and told her that since her body has been damaged, she's gonna take over Melt's body instead. At that moment, just when she thought he was finished, Emiya Alter, a person that she had cursed and left for dead in the past, shoots the pillars away and saves Melt from being consumed. With her body still remaining in terrible condition, Kiara was finally left to perish on her own. Let me know what you guys think. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Shout out to all the patrons, and I will be back with more Tight Moon content. It is your boy Tsiah. I'm out.